I just wanted to welcome Rico here. He's been an artist in residence for a few weeks now. This is a program funded by the National Endowment for the Arts, and it's put on by the Friends of Sheldon Jackson Museum with the museum. And Rico, as you'll learn in just a few moments, is a Tlingit Athabascan computer-aided designer and graphic artist with training in anthropology. Through his current ongoing project, Trickster Company, he carries forward the goals of empowering Indigenous artists, creating Indigenous resilience, and celebrating that resilience, celebrating cross-cultural connections, and representing Indigenous people's modern lifestyles. He was born in Anchorage, Alaska, and raised in Anchorage, Fairbanks, and Juneau. He's of the Raven House of the Hutnahati. He currently lives in Juneau. He's mostly self-taught, but has spent time learning from many artists in various workshops and studying the old masters in the books. He was previously at the museum in 2016 when I brought him here to teach a Formline design skateboard workshop, one of our most popular and fun youth programs in modern times that I remember. And recently, he became the first Tlingit person to design a US postage stamp, which I think becomes available on the 30th to purchase. Okay, very exciting. And so the stamp design depicts a raven just as he escapes from his human family and begins to transform back into his bird form. To create the stamp art, Worl used Formline, the traditional design style of Indigenous people of the Northwest Coast. He wraps up his residency Sunday, July 25th. So please come meet him if you haven't met him yet. And join me in welcoming him for this artist talk entitled Forming Lines from Star Wars to Formline. And join me in acknowledging that we are on traditional Tlingit Ami. Welcome.
Okay, can everyone online see the PowerPoint?
I can, yeah.
Okay, great. Shish, Salat Yukat Dosap, Sukakari Ayachat, Yeshit Ayachat, just cut Dach. I am Rico Worl. I am from the Raven moiety. I am from the Shukakari clan. I am from the Raven House, and I am from the Chilkat Kwan. I am from my father's people, the Shungukadi, and I am from my mother's people, the Tlingit Athabascans. I am from 10,000 years of a people's relationship to this land. I am from at least 4,000 years of a people's study in a specific design style. I am from 525 years of colonization, but more importantly, I'm from 525 years of survivance. I am from the Tlingit people and the Athabascan people. I am from the dedication of the generations before me as they worked to pass the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act. And I am from a family of strong living people. I am from Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo of my cousins. And I'm from Star Wars with my homework. And I'm from the 90s, my homies. I am from the age of the rise of the internet. I am from University of Pennsylvania Department of Anthropology, class of 2008. I am from urban exploration, and I'm from hometown downtown. I am from pigment and silver. I am from digital vector points. And all the vector points that I'm from have created the trajectories that guided my values as created today. In a book I've been reading called The Medici Effect, there's this theory called the intersection. And so a lot of the reason it's called the Medici Effect is in Italy in the 15th century, the Medici family was bringing in all kinds of people to work together, to collaborate. So they're bringing in from every field too. So they brought in artists, they brought in philosophers, they brought in scientists and financiers. And the family, they were finding that a lot of really big innovations were coming from these intersections. There was a lot of innovations in places that they didn't expect. And I would kind of continue that line of thought with kind of the idea that Indigenous people were born into the intersection. We're born in Western hospitals, and we're named in traditional ceremony. So, and it's not a concept that's new to us. It's one that we've been exploring for quite some time. This, sometimes people call it walking in two worlds. This is actually a cover to a magazine that my family ran in, I think it was the 70s or 80s. That's 83 there, May of 83. And there you can see, I have his name written here. I think his name is Joseph, I can't think of his last name, Anandapuk, I want to say. But you can see, so this is like not a new topic, the topic of the intersection. So, you know, he's wearing a traditional outfit in the mirror, and he's wearing a modern suit, you know, looking into the mirror. And so it's something that we've been exploring for at least, you know, what is it, 83, that's 20, 30 years ago now. I was born in 84, so like they've been thinking, you know, it's a topic that's been discussed longer than I've been alive. And like I said, I got my training in anthropology, and I spent some time working for the Alaska Heritage Institute. So I helped kind of do some NAGPRA stuff. That's Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act. So that's repatriating items from museums across the country. And then I helped them develop their arts department as well. And then it was after that where I started to work on a really big project, which I've been calling Trickster Company. And so the intersections that I've experienced in my life have brought me to three major goals with my design work and with my project Trickster Company. So the first one, I'll lay them out. So there's intercommunity strength, there's intercommunity connection, and there's cultural diplomacy. So intercommunity strength is kind of came down to the idea that I want to promote strength within my community. So I want to create products that help empower people. And this kind of came about when I returned home from college, and I ended up deciding to paint my own longboard with my clan crest. So mine's the one with the salmon there, and on the left. And the idea to me was really just, it wasn't necessarily that I was thinking that I was being an artist or anything, as much as I just wanted to represent. To me, it was important to be able to say, in the world, this is who I am, especially in a world where, we do pretty good here in Southeast Alaska, but like a lot of the world, people don't realize that Native people are, modern, presence, engaged people with the world. And so, longboarding was a hobby for me at the time, and I just wanted to be able to represent in my day-to-day lifestyle. And a lot of the products kind of continued down that line. I ended up, the next skate longboard there is one I painted for my cousin for, I think, Christmas or something. And then, his cousin wanted one as well. It became very apparent to me that there was a demand for this type of product, this lifestyle product, this identity product is what my grandmother runs the Alaska Heritage Institute as well, and she does all kinds of work in the community. And so that's a term that she coined, is the identity products. And so it's these line of products that kind of serve that purpose that I kind of described what the longboard does for me, is being able to represent in day-to-day modern kind of ways. And so you can see that like there's been a lot of like demand from youth and from everybody to have access to this. So, and for me, especially with the youth, it was a great way of like of giving a gateway into the culture. So it wasn't as startling or scary as like, oh, now you have to start to learn, a language, which is important, but like it can be daunting at first. You have to learn, thousands of years of history. You have to learn all your client relations, and those are things that you should learn, and they'll eventually come to you as a young native kind of growing up in the culture. But they can also be intimidating things. So this is a way of just having, small, manageable way of engaging the culture. And, maybe they'll take that home and end up talking to their family about the art style or about their own client crest, what designs they can use on their own things if they want to paint their own skateboard or whatever, product they use day to day. So that's sort of one method that I've been using in my goal of trying to promote the intra-community strength. So intra-community connection is about cross-cultural understanding and empathy. It's vital to our diverse community, and I think the future is even more diverse. So I think it's urgent that we have strong bridges to share this social capital. If you look at the level of appropriation in the fashion industry, it's still prevalent and national. Alaska Heritage Institute just settled the case with Neiman Marcus in the last month. So it's not something that's disappearing, or it's not a problem that's entirely addressed, and so it's still something that's going on. And so I wanted to create products that allowed anybody to be able to appreciate without appropriating. So a lot of the work that I do on these products, because I was raised in the culture, I know how to create products that don't step over bounds. They don't go into clan atu, which is the clan-owned objects, and they're things that anybody can wear, appreciate, and enjoy. The third major goal is cultural diplomacy. So both as a brand, both personally, as well as through Trickster Company, we have the opportunity to be very visible, and that also means we have the responsibility of representing modern Native people. And being in Juneau, and you guys here in Sitka know it too. Not so much, post-COVID yet, but for a while we were having, 1 million+ people come through Southeast Alaska. And so it was a huge, there was a lot of eyes on kind of trying to figure out who are Native people, what is Native art. And a lot of the representation wasn't really accurate because they were just items in gift shops that were more knockoff items than anything else. So for a while, I did close it at the start of COVID. I'm going to reopen at some point, but a lot of my responsibility was to be we're here, we're modern people, we're engaged in modern culture. And the same thing goes for having opportunities of being in the news. It's something that comes up regularly, and because of that opportunity, it's also a responsibility. And I kind of mentioned the idea earlier a couple times. It's there's a lot of people in the world don't realize that Native people are around. There's this whole concept called the Vanishing Indian, which is also an old concept that I'm trying to just take my stand against. Not necessarily that I can solve it, but I could stand there and represent. And okay. Yeah, the stamp is a good example of that. It's for me, this was a huge, exciting thing. In 2018, somebody that worked with the United States Postal Service ended up visiting a gift shop at the National Museum of the American Indian. And this was and he ended up seeing Trickster Company products there. And we've got about 150 shops across the country that sell our products. So it's out there, and he just happened to run across it. And that's how he ended up like discovering my work and reaching out to us at Trickster Company. And then I think there's a demand. I think there's like a growing hunger for authenticity in today's modern day, especially with like, you know, people are really excited about Amazon. I'm sometimes still excited about Amazon, but you know, you go on there, none of it's got any depth. There's no products on there that have like, you know, any soul, any like connection to any community or people. So I think what I've been noticing is like when I put my stuff out there, people are drawn to that authenticity for whatever reason. And so I think the stamps, they were announced in November, and it kind of went viral. Like I was on NPR, that was great. I got to talk to Art Silverman, that was amazing. And so, you know, people are just drawn to that. There was more coverage for this than the Star Wars stamp. Somebody, one of the USPS people, I'm not going to quote them because I think they were just joking, but they were like, Raven story, a better story than Star Wars. And like, so people are, for whatever reason, are drawn to it. So, so this whole project for me has been like a moment of continuing that same work that I kind of laid out in the 3 goals of 4, like cultural diplomacy. This is a national platform for me to like be able to represent on. And yes.
How did you have to like draw several different designs and submit to the postal service, or did they approach you and say, how did that all work?
I'll come back to that.
Okay,
I promise.
okay.
Okay, so yeah. Oh, let me just finish this.
Can you turn that blinking thing off?
Oh, yeah.
On this side?
Yes.
I didn't want to interrupt.
It gets a little fast there at some point. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. So that slide slid in a little bit early, but this was another product that I created to kind of working towards those goals of cultural diplomacy. So this is a product that I actually got this funded through Kickstarter, and the goal of this one was really to kind of explore, or the goal was to create at least one product that would go into tourist shops and actually be real. So if you go into a lot of tourist shops, there's a lot of knockoff stuff, and I wanted there to be at least one option in there for people to actually be able to buy. And it's designed by Native artists. It's got like, you know, the history that I'm able to put into it. And it's at the price point where it is a tourist price object, you know, because not everyone that comes up has a lot of money to be able to buy authentic, you know, like a mask, a whole carving or painting. They can be kind of expensive. And so I wanted to be able to create that broader range of people's ability to be able to support Native art without having to like buy something too extravagant. So there's the skateboards, a couple of the earlier skateboards. The Star Wars stuff I do, and it's sort of part of the whole message of like, we're modern people, we're here today, and we're engaged with the stories that we hear today, not just the traditional ones. A lot of the work that I'm doing right now is as Jackie mentioned, is Cad Work, computer-aided design. So I create these designs in the computer. On the bottom left, you can see a CAD version of the design. Then I had it 3D printed into steel, which is the one on the right. And my uncle gave me this grill because I moved and I needed a grill. And it was all beat up and ugly, and I refurbished it and then added that kind of metal piece to it just to kind of adorn it. And I think if you know, especially here at the Sheldon Jackson Museum, if you go in there and look at the objects, one thing they'll tell you is that like it's an ethnographic collection, so there's like a lot of just every day-to-day stuff, but you'll still see that the day-to-day stuff was decked out and it was beautiful. And so that's sort of my modern way of moving in that same tradition of why not make something that's everyday beautiful. This is sort of some process work with CAD. So on the bottom left there is this little thingy on the shoe, and it's actually called a Dubray. This guy at Nike is a Scottish guy, I think, and he didn't know what to call it when he first designed it. Put it on a shoe, and in his first language, Dubray is thingy. So that's some reason stuck, but it's just a shoe adornment. And so this is kind of give you a sense of some of the CAD work process looks like. It's kind of fast. I was trying to like not spend too much time on it, but I also wanted you to see it. It's kind of a cool process. So this CAD work is what I've been doing during my residency here. I've been working on a pendant, and I've got it pretty much all CAD up, and I work with specialty kind of companies who do 3D printing. And so these ones I've already printed, and I've got them in silver, printed in silver, and then I've also got a gold one. And you can kind of print in all kinds of materials from silver to gold to stainless steel to all kinds of plastics and ceramics. So it's a pretty versatile like medium to work in. And let's see what this is. Oh, this is kind of a slowed down, like to show where, this is what I got printed actually. So this is the final file I sent them. And unfortunately, I don't have a photo of the final one here because I'm not sure. I didn't carve one yet. I'm going to put some carving on there, like I'm going to hand engrave. So this brush on the left is actually a piece that I designed in CAD, had produced, and then I engrave over the surface of it just to add that layer of extra. And that's one of my bracelets on the right. So jewelry to me is a little bit of a hobby. Trickster company keeps me pretty busy, you know, beyond kind of overtime. So once in a while I'll make a piece of jewelry. And then the other thing I've been working on is I have a Patreon, which is kind of a way that people can support artists by just kind of subscribing to them. So every month I design a new tiny sticker. These are like 1-inch little, oh yeah, there's some. They're like little tiny 1-inch stickers. So that's a way for me to like, I started that after the pandemic, and it's sort of been my way of like staying engaged with some of my collectors. Like, you know, it's only like $5 a month, but it's for each person. But like, it's a way that I've been able to like stay in touch on a month-to-month basis with people that are my collectors and be able to engage at a little more than just you know, likes on Instagram. And it had a lot to do with just, you know, I didn't have to shop anymore, so I wasn't able to see people every day. And yeah, it was a way of just staying sane. There's a couple more of those stickers that I produced. That was the shop. I missed the shop. It was beautiful. And then, oops. Uh-oh. I just kind of froze the computer, sorry. Yeah, let me see if we can get back there. Okay, I think it's okay. And the other time, the rest of my time, I spend a lot of time kind of working on my Instagram posts and following, just to kind of keep that level of engagement up as well. This is the nice thing about using tech is this is a drawing I did on my iPad, and you can kind of like record the entire process. So it's kind of cool to show people like from start to finish, all the line work.
Is that freehand that you're doing that drawing?
Yeah, that's freehand. And then that's the silk screen that I made from it. So after I finished drawing it up, I vectorize it on Adobe Illustrator, and then I'll do these silk screens or other products. Okay, the stamp. So the process with a stamp after having been selected or having met with the USPS art director was, it was pretty good. I really appreciate it. His name is Antonio Alcala. I appreciate working with him. He was able to kind of advocate because they did have some ideas that they wanted to for the stamp. But Antonio did a good job kind of, once I educated him about like, oh, I think it's most appropriate for if you're going to hire an Indigenous artist to talk about Indigenous culture, to like let them tell the story. And so he did a good job of kind of representing me. The process was like, I would work with him and kind of do concept proposal sketches. And he would work with the USPS stamp selection committee, who would kind of give feedback. And so it was like this 2-layer process. It was a little bit cumbersome, but it was okay. On the left there, I wish I had done this all on my iPad. That was before I got my iPad, so I could like actually show the drawing process start to finish. But those are a few sketches. For me, it was a very different process in a sense that like usually, like if I'm designing a stamp, you can see in the middle on the far left, you can see some very tiny drawings. Those are actually true to scale drawings. I printed it out and I was drawing it the size of the stamp. Sorry, my throat's a little dry, so I've been kind of coughing a little bit. Okay. But in this process, I actually did something I hadn't done since college, and I took out these huge sheets of paper. There's like on the top left and bottom right, and I did more gestural charcoal and just kind of like really went at it, tried to do it as fast as I could without getting too attached to any. But over the course of maybe 6 months, I went back and forth with the USPS, and we kind of settled on the one you see on the right. That's I chose the Raven story, Box of Daylight, particularly because I think it's a nice entry point for a lot of people to learn about Tlingit culture. I think it has a lot of kind of basic epistemological lessons in there. So such as like the grandfather always gives in to his grandchild asking to play with the box of stars, to play with the box of daylight, to play with the box of the moon, even though Raven keeps like releasing him into the universe. And that has to do with, everyone knows it as sort of the story that's like, oh, it's about a grandparents' love for their grandchildren. But there's also kind of like deeper parts where it's also more about a person's respect for their opposite. So in Tlingit society, we're a matrilineal society, but we have two sides. So you're born into one side or the other. You're either born into the eagles or the ravens, and there's always to be balance kept between the two halves. And so the grandfather would have been the opposite side of Raven. And so he would have, out of respect between the clans, also been unable to deny Raven the right to like play with these boxes. And so I think it's got a lot of depth that people can, but it's also like a very easy entry point at the same time. So you can it's a good way to scale how much people that discover the stamp can scale into learning more about the culture for something that's something as easy to listen to as a Raven story. And then the stamp depicts specifically Raven kind of transforming midway between, at the end of the story, kind of transforms back from a little human baby back into a raven and then escapes. And so this kind of like a very frantic moment where he's grabbing up as many of celestial objects as he can, some stars and some moons and the sun, and trying to escape with them all. So it's got Raven, and then it's got his hand as well to kind of represent the fact that he's still mid-transformation. He's not all the way transformed back into human figure. And I think I chose that very specific point because I was really excited about conveying the drama of the story, not just like the beauty of it or the prestige of it, but also like the very human parts of it. There's something very relatable about like being on the cusp of success or failure. He's about to like accomplish something great and bring these things to the world, and but it's not complete. There's that moment of excitement, and so that's really what I was trying to share with that one. That comes out on the 30th. There's a release ceremony in Juneau at Alaska Heritage. I'm supposed to write a speech for that. I'm not too excited about that. But yeah, thank you for coming here. Did you guys have any questions?
I do have a question. When you're making the thingies, the shoes,
oh, yeah.
Like, will those be mass produced, or are those also kind of like hand carved specialty items?
That's a good question. So when I create things, I usually have a pretty good scale. So it's like I will have some that I create that are like hand engraved. Every single detail is going to be like precise, and I'm going to put so much detail. I'm going to put like little diamonds encrusted in it and everything, and make it amazing and beautiful. But I'll probably also eventually down the line create not necessarily mass scale, but kind of medium scale. I'll probably print 30 of them, but I won't hand engrave them or anything. I'll probably put the artwork on in another way. I'm gonna turn this back on, but I'm gonna turn it off the flashy thing. So this is the other computer. So there's a way to kind of add low relief design. And so those ones will be a little more simple, kind of along the lines of that. And that's actually the project that I've been working on while I've been here. I just completed it the day before yesterday.
And then just a follow-up with that. So with the Formline, I know that there are shapes that you use, but then within that, you have liberty for the scaling, for the composition, for those, right? So can you talk a little about like the traditional versus the contemporary approach?
Yeah, okay. So I'm going to break that into two questions. Is like the shapes that I use, what are the shapes that I use? And the second part being kind of exploring the traditional versus contemporary approaches of using those shapes. So I would say that my work is the Formline in many ways. I try to be as traditional as possible. It looks more modern because of the methods I use, but the true, like when it comes down to the actual Formline, I try to stay traditional as possible. There's a lot of, it's a system of art that's been designed over a few thousand years, and it works really well for, very specific reasons. And to give you a sense of what it is that works really well, this picture's okay. But in the middle, you can see an eye, and then outside of that, there's an ovoid. I don't know if that's a very good picture, actually. That one's kind of confusing. Let's just use a stamp. So Raven's eye, and then around his eye is this shape called the ovoid. The same thing at the very center of the stamp on his wing is this kind of roundish. I'm trying to describe it so that people online can know what I'm talking about too, what I'm referring to. But it's a kind of oval shape, and it's kind of squished on one side, and it's round. That's called an ovoid. It's sort of like, a lot of artists will refer to it as mother ovoid. And every other shape in this design refers back to the primary ovoid of each design. You can actually take an ovoid and you can kind of split it open, and then it becomes a U shape. So if you take, I really should have some like paper to be able to show this. It's kind of difficult to explain out loud, but every shape that you have, you can actually go in there and adapt it from the ovoid. And that's how come Formline works, because it is every shape in there comes from the ovoid.
Like the hand, it's smushed.
Mm-hmm. So yeah.
Yeah. I know you could do like many workshops, so don't.
Yeah. Sorry. So, but other than that, like my work is mostly known as contemporary because of the mediums that I use, mostly being that it's digital, that I'll put them on skateboards, that I'll put them on basketballs. So it's the medium that surprises people more than that's more contemporary than the form. Right? Yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah, do you have an online shop?
Yes, yes. I sell both through trickstercompany.com and then more of my handmade stuff. So the things that are going to be extra with the diamond studs and all that, and hand engraved, are going to be on ricoworl.com.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's several comments, and they go fleeting through. How can I grab one? Ricardo, I love the way you use modern materials and modern words, and I need to get caught up. What does CAD mean?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, CAD.
Yes, CAD is computer aided design.
Yep. Okay, see, there's a whole battery of new words with modernity or whatever we call it.
Yes.
And you are a living example of that next generation. It's just delightful. Is there any chance you've met someone named J.C. Nahohai from Zuni Pueblo? He is designing now clothing, and he has his own company, and apparently he's doing quite well. And I thought maybe this is a whole new movement, is young people doing this sort of thing, which is really exciting. Congratulations.
Thank you. I absolutely think there is a movement. There's and I'm definitely proud to be like part of that kind of growing industry. There's quite a few Indigenous designers out there now creating their own businesses. I think I do know JC. I think we once traded some art.
He's probably a pretty large guy.
Yeah. We traded. I used to go sell at Indian Market in Santa Fe, yes. And we did some art trades there. So
oh, good.
Yeah, but it's been a while since I talked to him.
Well, I knew his grandmother, his great grandmother.
Oh wow, cool.
Yes. And I know your grandmother, and I just communicated with her about a picture of what I think would be your great grandmother, Kadanaha from Skagway.
Okay. Cool.
Have you heard of her? You haven't heard of Kadanaha? Well, she taught here at SJ on invitation by my father, who was Leslie Yaw, who was here from 1923 to 52 at the school. And he hired Native people to come, and Kadanaha, Mrs. Kadanaha, was one of the persons. And so there's a whole picture. I brought the book to give to you so that you could see this. And then when you see your grandmother, you can say, is this a relative of hers? I don't want to embarrass you or her, but one time I heard Rosita mention a grandmother from Skagway. And I thought, oh, that's her plan. I haven't heard her talk the way you openly talk about your links to Athabascan and to Quintet. Your links to Athabascan, do you know which group it was?
The Decaton.
Decaton.
Holy Cross area.
Oh, okay. That's a close one. And then it's Haynes and Stabler. Chilcat. Wow. Yes, and you're the next generation. I can't tell you how much hope is embodied into you by my generation.
Great.
To see that everybody's, you know, wringing their hands over all the kids that die. And I'm thinking the resilience, the genetic resilience, and the human resilience. And there's more cultural resilience than you've given folks credit for. There was a lot going on and underlying it. I think that maybe people's social connections, family connections, is a rich source of their culture for that identity that you've got. And that frees the rest of you for the creative work you're doing. And to educate the rest of us. It's not dead, it's alive, and it's vital, and it's fun. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for seeing that. Appreciate it.
Oh, my. Well, I've been an anthropologist for 60 years, and it's about time that I see some hope, because anthropology is accused of so much funny stuff. All the bad stuff, you know, the poor BIA and the missionaries, and my parents were missionaries here at Sheldon Jackson from 1923 to 52. So I had a double whammy, being an anthropologist and also a settler missionary. Probably I'm closer now, having moved back to Sitka 12 years ago, to my education background through my parents and their links. Everywhere I went in Alaska, there were graduates from SJ, and we would sing SJ fight song. And there's still some people here in town that remember it. And then the first memory I have of meeting Rosita was in Barrow. I had left the University of Alaska in Anchorage in a fit of pique when they promoted a young man straight out of graduate school. And he told me that they might consider me the next year if I had more publications. So I had more publications and full professors, but I was female and married and children. So I left and opened a company called Cultural Dynamics. I had a government contract, a number of them, and I was in Barrow. And your grandmother was there professionally in a political position of some sort. And so I saw her in action at a level that I would never have. And she was taking notes, but she had a fancy notebook. And I just get flashbacks to that and how I didn't know what she was doing and how jealous I was that she was genetically native. And I was raised here in Sitka and I taught anthropology. And I wasn't even 132nd or 36th anything. But I found out from my cousin that I did have a grandmother, or great grandmother, that was Indian in the Islanders. I felt, see, genetically I'm enriched. But how we value the continuity of all our mixtures now. And I feel it's a very important message you have. So please do publish while you've got all this new technology community. Yeah. Thank you again. I've got some for you.
Do you work with youth? You showed the photos of the skaters. Are you still working with youth?
I don't work with youth too much, other than just the design work that I do. I'm not a very good teacher, so I like to be in the computer. So it's like most of my head's in there. I have a harder time relating to people, so it's and to youth. So that's not as much as I'd like to be nice to, but it's not something I have a strength in.
Really think you were really cool. Like it seems like it would be that cool. I think you were so cool.
Cool. Rico, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So the museum was really excited about your application for the residency program. Rico was, selected. It's a very competitive program. We had a number of applicants, and we had to submit work samples and a bio, et cetera, the whole 9 yards, and do an interview. But we were really excited because you're using this technology, and I felt like your work helps the museum visitor, in some cases, Alaska, in some cases, people from elsewhere in the States or around the world, really sort of understand that this art form is innovative. This style of art's always been innovative. People are always using new tools, right. To not try to pigeonhole Tlingit art. And I think there can be a lot of pushback from some older school type folks or arts administrators or museums who might look at this and say, oh, well, like we need a carver. And there's nothing wrong with being a carver. It's great to have somebody working with an adze or a cooking knife. Yeah. But what message would you want to deliver to those arts administrators or museums who maybe are thinking a little bit more closed-minded and who aren't as receptive necessarily to trying something like this out?
I think that's definitely an important message that I want to convey, is that it doesn't make us any less traditional to be modern. It's because being traditional doesn't necessarily, it's not necessarily tied to the physical things that are in our lives. That iPad, even though I love designing on it, is not it doesn't define my art that comes out of it, the culture that I produce through it. And I think you can say this, you can kind of do the same thing if you look at the collection here. And I've been listening to the introductions they give over there and about the items, and you'll see in there that items have all of our history of items show progress and change when anything was introduced, whether it was a carving knife, an iron crook knife, which is not something that we had until contact, at least not in great numbers. And so but people will still say, oh, that's more traditional, but they're using an iron crook knife. I'm using my pad, but neither of these things were around, pre-contact. And so I think I don't think it's fair to pigeonhole any people into a specific time period, and that the culture is a living thing, and that's the thing that we're sharing, that we're bringing forward, that we're living and breathing into the next generation, and that's what the culture is. That's what the tradition is, not the tools. I don't know if did I answer it? Or?
Yeah, I hope there are arts administrators listening, museum people who might be questioning, the worth of this kind of work, because I think it's important to share that viewpoint. Thank you for sharing it with us. And then my last question, since the collection is so incredible, do you have any favorite pieces? I know we have a lot that's covered in plastic with the roofing, but anything come to mind that you really appreciated studying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've always really loved the goat horn spoons. Mm-hmm. I think that one's I think that's a good example of kind of the extra dormant in the everyday. A lot of times they were used for kui'ikers, potlatch or ceremony, but I think that kind of is in a line of everyday things. There are things that are there every day that are just decked out and gorgeous. The other thing that I really like is I always love studying the Inupiaq work, and one thing that I was thinking about while I was studying it is they're probably as far as they're probably the tribe that has the longest history of the most complex industrial design, in the Americas. If you look at their stuff, I mean, it's probably because the resources were more scarce there. We here in Southeast, we've had so many resources, which, a log turns into a canoe. But up there, if you look at a lot of those the items on that side, they're very technical, and they're very, like, a lot of small parts that they really had to engineer together to, like, be into a piece. And one thing I learned about the kayaks is, like, they're created with all these little parts, so that if one part breaks when they're not using it, they can go to shore and, like, craft that one part, not the whole thing's not broken. So they can. I think there's a level of ingenuity that I like studying in the function as well. So, yeah.
Great. Any other questions for Rico or anyone? I don't think anyone on the computer has piped in. You see anyone waving their hand or unmuting?
I don't see the chat.
Okay, if not, I thank you everybody for coming to this wonderful talk, and thanks for being here, Rico. It's been really great. If everybody remembers who's local anyway, we had Daisy Damientia here a couple times as artist in residence. Nancy was talking about lineage and relation, and it turns out that he is like the great nephew or something like that of Daisy, and so there's this wonderful connection. She was a really, really talented willow root basket weaver, and people just adored her. She would pack the house when she gave a talk. I mean, they would be waiting in line to talk to Daisy, and yeah, it's just. And you may say that you're shy and you don't really like talking to people or teaching, but I think that you have talent that you're not aware of in that capacity. So thank you for sharing that with us. And like Daisy, she was humble too. So thank you for being here and continuing to do what you're doing. Really exciting.
Thank you for having me.
We'll buy your stamps. Thank you, everybody.
Rosemary.
It's like, has anybody got anything to the Nike?
The what?
It's almost like the Nikes.
Oh. I think there's an artist named